there is somebody here who has witnessed this struggle and has actually, being at the forefront of this struggle since many of us were actually still in our mother's womb. It is Professor Anyangwe. So he is not just talking from textbook, he himself is the textbook of this struggle. He is not going to be talking to you about some papers. He himself co-authored many of those papers. He's not going to be talking to you about the point of view of some external observer. He lived it as a young man and has put all his life into it. And he's not going to be talking to you about it because he wants a position in the Republic of Amazonia tomorrow, because I can tell you, Prof has already had all he needs, and all he's asking for is for the next generation not to go through what he went through. And Prof was one of the real founding blocks, and one of those people who actually was at the forefront of AAC1 and AAC2. This is when people in Cameroon or the Amazonia were actually still talking about federation. And at that time, people were actually even just talking about good governance. But I think, like somebody had mentioned, they had not known that what actually was affecting them was a cancer. It's like, I'm an oncologist, and I spend all my time with this. Sometimes somebody has a lump, and they don't know that it's a lump, and they're talking about some, different kinds of treatments. But when you eventually find out that it's a cancer, the treatment changes. And I think Prof is going to walk you that path to when he was talking about what he thought was a benign thing that could just be taken care of, to now that he has not only found that it's a cancer, but it's a cancer that if it is not cut out will kill the host. And the host is Southern Cameroons. Prof has also been counsel to the Banjul case. He was, before he was forced out of Cameroon, he was a lecturer at the University of Yaoundé 1 and 2. He was a lecturer at Yaoundé at Boya University. And then when he went there to force out of Africa, and of course, people welcome talent. He was a lecturer at a university in Zambia, Switzerland, and then currently, ended up in Wata Sisulu, as I talked about before, dedicating all his time to the struggle. Prof, we cannot thank you enough. Some of us look to you, and when our energy stops, we look to you, still fighting, and then we'll say we will keep on fighting as well. Welcome to the podium. Give him a hand here in
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here and to meet all of you and for us to have this engagement. I think, Edmond, you made a very apt description. In the early days when this whole thing started, I remember as early as 1982, when Barrister Dinka, at that time only reformed because he became reformed later, came over. I was living in Yaoundé in some remote place called La Montée de Handicapé. If all of you have been in Yaoundé, you know some place like that, yes. And so I said, because I'd known him, in Victoria in those good old days. So what is happening? He said, you mean you are sitting quiet and you see what is happening and so on, can't you read between the lines what is going on? That's what is going on. He said, well, I think we better take this fight to the people. 1972 is not acceptable, what they did. I said, yes, it's not acceptable. But what do we do about it? He said, just hold on. That's how my engagement with him started. And when Bia came in 84, 82, it made matters worse. In 84, when he passed that is decree, going back to what was then French Cameroon, La République de Cameroon. That's where all of this started. The new social order, letter to the État-Major, all of those things which we wrote. But in those days, we had to be very, very careful, I must admit. Because although we had all those documents, had them, there was buried underground somewhere, just in case somebody found you with them, you know. And Armstrong, you know, you've been the Security Service, you know what I'm talking about. And but the interesting thing, what Edmund has said is so apt, because in those days, we're even begging even for what? For federation. Let's go back to 1961 as we were. You have a state, you have a state. It's incredible. If I look back on it now, I just cannot imagine why we're even begging for that. But we're begging. But you see, when you're a beggar, you're begging something. The person who supposedly has the thing, think that because you're a beggar, you cannot have it, and refuse. And all the problems since then have ever started. So I got engaged with all a series of other leaders who have been at the forefront. Dinka, you're talking about, Dr. Anyangwe, which many people don't remember. Strange, because he led that movement, the early movement, in which we were all campaigning for federation, long before people like Dr. Luma Martin came along and all of those kind of things. Before Simon Econteng and myself, they were calling us the Young Turks. That time was the Young Turks. The takeover confronted Mr. Biya and his government. And again, even in 1992, at the age 1 and 2, we're asking for what? For federation. Begging. Asking the Pharaoh, please give us a federation. We beg you, we beg. We beg. But of course, like the biblical story, God hardened the Pharaoh's heart, and he refused to give us that federation. That's when things fell apart. Because then we said, well, why should we beg for federation anyway? Why? As if we are not a people. The rest is history, you know. When we decided in Bamenda that we'll give them reasonable time. When reasonable time came, I remember Dr. Kwanga here, Cho and his friends, they were so impatient. And the youth league, they came and said, you guys are wasting our time with this nonsense thing. We are going to talk about this thing. I remember a contact with someone and he said, the young man think, okay, we'll see. But analogy was exactly the same like in South Africa. When the ANC started and Mandela came up and decided to create, they said, young man, you know very well, go and create the youth league, let's see. And they started the fight. This Mandela everybody talking about, they didn't know how he came about. So they did exactly the same thing and charted a path which has led us to a revolutionary path since then. Because sometimes it's good to listen to younger people. Sometimes the youth is impatient. But they tend to see and they feel this much more, the urgency of it. We thought we could just, oh, well, let's take time, things will come, keep on begging, things will come, and so on. And they said, no. I don't want to go to this history, what they did at that time, which eventually led to him being arrested and taken to Kondi. But all that is history. But today, what I want to say today here, even with my involvement with all these people, Chief Ayamba, Ngalafo, even Frundi himself, and I want to put the record straight, and I've said it several times, we never created the SDF for the purpose of integration in French Cameroon. It was a Southern Cameroons issue. And I'll tell you now, the debate at that time between two camps, or three. One was saying, oh, we should just integrate there. And we said, why should we integrate? The other camp would say, we should go to the bush and fight this whole thing. But God couldn't, because at that time, it's just like now, it's really uncanny. We're never prepared, there was no army, there was really nothing. The difference, though, is that at that time, for the founding of the SDF, people had not been sufficiently conscientized. The awareness, most of you here, you were, perhaps at that time, you were not, the level of awareness which you have now wasn't there at that time. So even if we started a fight there, we wouldn't have gone anywhere. But this is the right moment. Like they say, God's time is always the best. So it created this moment. So when that spark came in 2016, it didn't take a long time for the thing to catch fire, as it were. But again, you saw that even in 2016, the lawyers, civil society were asking, teachers, barely asking again for federation. Can you imagine this? And what we got is the usual customary thing, insults, use of violence, and so on. But thank God they didn't listen. It's transformed itself quickly to the situation which we have today. so on. So right now, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here, because quite often our people tend to run away even from their own shadows. I've made an article of faith in the consciousness of the ambassador's consciousness that wherever there's diversity, our people have suffered enough. I must be present to deconstruct whatever narrative which goes against our assertion of our independence. So that's why I went down to Atlanta and able to engage with my friend, which all of you know. In the end, we agreed to disagree. As federalists and I, as an independentist, as people say. But it was a good thing. It was a good thing. And I think one of the things which we lack as a people is the ability to confront each other, engage each other at the level, not of personalities, because for that, that's the most easiest thing. You can insult anybody from morning to evening. It means nothing. And it doesn't show that you're intelligent anyway. But it's engagement. You have to engage with people at the level of thinking, conception, theories, and so on. Leave the individual aside. What is he saying? That is the kind of engagement we ought to have. But our people have got in this easy habit, getting into a machine, and you think the more you insult, the better you are. Frankly, people just laugh at you because actually you're making no contribution at all. So in this stage which we are now, I think we have two big camps. One camp I call the progressive, the other camp I call the reactionary forces. The progressive forces are those who stand for an independent Ambazonia, without any apology at all for that. The reactionary camp are called the fusionists. They want us to fuse in French Cameroon. Sometimes they are called unionists, sometimes they are called decentralists, sometimes they are called unitarists, whatever name you give them. But of course, for those who stand for independence, you know they are demonized as what? We are extremists, we are terrorists, we are secessionists. I've told you, why do you even bother about those adjectives? Right from 61, they are characterized as terrorists, as secessionists. Look at the papers, way back, even the time for writing Akwaya, the Cameroon Outlook. You see those things there, as far back as that time. So they're not saying anything new. This is how their thinking process is. And they think that by using those names, they will frighten us. We'll spend our time denying. They all know we're not terrorists, we are not secessionists, and so on and so forth. My answer has always been, we are secessionists, and so what? You can go and drink the sea. Doesn't change me. So that is the thing. But the irony about it is, this division which we have amongst ourselves is an uncanny resemblance of the kind of thing we've seen before. I call that a déjà vu. Our people, as the leaders, our leaders here have remarked, we left Nigeria. Again, to the credit of Nigeria, they didn't start shooting us. Democratically, we left. We say we are not Nigerians. The British forced us into this, what they call administrative union with Nigeria, where we administer from Enugu, not even from Lagos. From Enugu, you will not, I mean, if you see what I mean, we're a colony within a colony. Our people said, no, we are not. So we moved away from that. In 1954, we established a government, an enviable government in Boya, very democratic. Our people were very cooperative. But within 5 short years, 1954 to 1959, everything just kaput, as I said. Our people started speaking different tongues. We started arguing amongst themselves. They could not even think about the destiny of the nation and of the people. We were dragged into this stupid nonsense about Nigeria and French Cameroon. We had left Nigeria, isn't it, 1954? So how can anyone be talking about us going to Nigeria again in 1961? It doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. French Cameroon, of course, was an unknown territory. No connection whatsoever. So how could we be going to French Cameroon, which at that time was in the throes of a civil war? Literally, blood all over the place, with decapitated heads, from Lum right up to Mbunda, which the French did to teach people a lesson. But how could anyone who wants us well think that we can go and join them? But this was a diktat by the United Nations and the UK, and I've had occasion to tell the UK MPs, I said, you guys, you are responsible for our calamity. I must be part of that solution. They all repeat that same answer. Oh, we respect your decision in 1961 to join French Cameroon. I said, rubbish. They manufactured this whole thing about lack of economic viability, which again was against international law. Forced us into this arrangement. They say was the alternative was a choice. There was no choice. Under international law, when you want to decolonize a territory, there are three options. The person have to either have independence, they will have to have integration, or any other political status chosen by themselves. So if the plebiscite was a lawful plebiscite, would have had those three options given to us. The British, in their infinite wisdom, decided to eliminate independence. And my goodness, if you read the declassified documents, you go out and shoot the next Englishman you see. I'm telling you. The willing and deed that was taken behind the fortress, and they got poor and unfortunate, they knew nothing what was happening. And lies. Oh, the UN has said this. You cannot say this. You cannot, which was all a whole big lie. Hoax. So manipulated that in that situation, and you ask why? What was the British interest? Why were they doing that? For as far as the British were concerned, the British Cameroon Trust Territory was only good as material for infilling at the border of Nigeria. That is what the Viscount Simon said. Viscount Neil, sorry. When they went to Parliament after the 1918 defeat of the Germans, and they divided the thing, and the British took a small strip of territory. Remember, British took Douala, they took Garoua, they could have taken the whole of that place, they wanted it. South African Republic, French troops and so on, they didn't capture much of it. But when they went to a table, the British took a small strip of territory. And in Parliament, they asked the Viscount, Milner, said, why is it that you took such a small strip of territory? His explanation was simple. Look, we already have big territory of Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, all of that. We don't want any other territorial colonial commitment. It's so expensive. What we're only interested in is to have a nice border at the border of Nigeria. If you look at the map, you will see that we're kind of interfering with Nigeria if you look at the way we bought there. The British were concerned to have a nice border. That's all. And throughout, the policy was to sink us into Nigeria. Come what may. And they had believed that after nearly 50 years, 44 years of administration of Nigeria, and the plebiscite was going to be very easy. We simply vote to join Nigeria. When the vote turned out differently, they were so angry. They decided to do one of the most stupid things, which I can't understand. They themselves say in their own words, on the 1st of October, we transferred sovereignty to French Cameroon. Can you imagine that? Their own words, I don't my own. Macleod, the Colonial Secretary, on the 1st of October, 1961, the House of Commons. As I'm speaking to you, ladies and gentlemen, the Southern Cameroon has already been transferred to Mr. Hejo of French Cameroon. First, British had no sovereignty over the Southern Cameroon anyway. They had no sovereignty. The sovereignty of the Trust Territory resides with the people of the territory, waiting to emerge at the moment of independence. So they had no right. It wasn't a British colonial territory, it was a UN Trust Territory. So it was a purported transfer. But French Cameroon then took now as a successor colonialist. So what happened on 1st October was not independence, which the UN had hoped was going to be. Not decolonization, but recolonization, which our leaders here have already emphasized on. And that is our grievance with the British, that they led us into this big mess, and they must fix it. They are resisting. Unfortunately for us, the government in 1961 that led us into the mess was a conservative government. It is that same government that is in power today. The same conservative government. There's a sense of guilt. I could sense a sense of guilt when talking to some of the MPs. You know, it's like, this is a closed chapter. We don't want to look at it. You know, it's too dirty because it's going to open a lot of canker worms. This decision about the Mauritian case has come to complicate their lives even more. Because the ICJ decided, Mr. Britain, the decolonization of Mauritius was incomplete. You have to go back and do the job. Now our case is coming. incomplete decolonization, they will have to come back and do the job. And this time with the United Nations, because we're a trust territory. This is the kind of thing they're afraid of. They don't want to hear. They want to hear. So I'm saying, in the face of all of this, we should be able to sink our differences, stop insulting ourselves. We should be able to form a common front and present our matter as one people, so that we don't have a repeat of what happened in 1950, between 1959 and 1961, where because of our disagreements, other people jumped in and decided our fate, not us. We need to avoid that. We need to avoid all this gossip over the internet. WhatsApp groups are all groups where people spend their time. If you look at some of those things, you want to keep our sanity, you better get out of some of them. Nothing constructive. Everything is destruction. So we need to get out of that. And so what I propose here to do right now, very briefly, my brief contribution, is one to critique certain arguments that have been advanced by reactionary forces, and to interrogate the fact that we seem to be flirting with two ideas: independence and dependence. When you talk about federation with French Cameroon, it's dependence the state you're talking about. It's not independence. So we, as a body politic of Ambazonia, we cannot be flirting with those two ideas. They are diametrically opposed, contradictory. You can't say you want independence and also say you want dependence. It doesn't make any sense. So you confuse the international community. You confuse state actors. You confuse intergovernmental agencies, organizations, by that kind of a narrative. Saying, oh, well, you see, yeah, no, my ambassador, some want independence, some don't want independence. I mean, how can you be a people who say want dependence? I've never seen in life, throughout history, a people deciding dependent status, that want to be a dependency of another country. Where has that ever happened? Never happened. Because there's nothing you can possibly gain by that kind of a status. There's nothing. So, when you listen to the first argument often advanced, the reactionary forces say, oh, we are engaged in secession. International community will not let us have secession and so on. Big time lie. There is not one single rule of international law or principle of international law that says secession is illegal. It doesn't exist. Secession is a meta-juridical phenomenon, which all states just recognize when it happens. And we look at throughout history, ever since the collapse of the empire system and the takeover by the Westphalia system, states have developed as a result of what? Secession, break-up, and so on. There are hundreds and hundreds of them that are happening. The United Nations cannot go out like some knight errant. So go around beating who want to commit, who want to have secession. No, it cannot. In any case, it is impossible. You cannot even do that. If any people, even if the legitimate part of a country, is sufficiently aggrieved and wants to secede, there's nothing anybody can do about that. Nothing. We've seen that happen. I don't want to quote this example of South Sudan. There's nothing you can do about it. The remedy for that kind of situation is for that government of that country to make sure it gives the people what they want. So there is no rule of international law which says that, no, we can't have secession, and so on and so forth. If you do have any event in our context relating to French Cameroon, I'm not aware that there's any territory of French Cameroon that is seceding. I'm not aware of it. Ambazonia has never been, is not, and will never be French Cameroon territory. French Cameroon has no title. Legal term, you say, you have no title to Ambazonia. What is their title? Pure international law. When did they acquire that title? Tell us. There's nothing. There's nothing. So, the response to all these things about people talking about secession and so on and so forth is to tell them that no, there's no such thing under international law. Countries are free to secede. If they succeed, that is fine. Furthermore, the United Nations is not a territorial sovereign it has a bag of territory to be dishing out to countries. You take this, you take this, you take this. No, it doesn't happen that way. Even in the context of decolonization, the United Nations does not grant statehood. It doesn't. The conditions and the statehood conditions are enumerated in the Montevideo Convention of 1933. It sets out clearly when an entity becomes a state. And once it fulfills those conditions, that thing becomes a state, maintain relationship with other countries that recognize it, irrespective of the United Nations. Of course, if the United Nations gives collective recognition, that facilitates the interaction between the United Nations and member states of the United Nations. But otherwise, it has nothing to do with the United Nations. The historical example, Switzerland, everybody ran to Switzerland until much recently. Was never a member of the United Nations. But the United Nations located its services there in Switzerland. Yeah. Or China, for example. For many years, the UN maintained the fiction that the true representative of China is Taiwan, or Formosa, they call it Taiwan. You know? And so the mainland China was ignored, which was complete nonsense. So whether an entity is a state or not has nothing to do with the United Nations. We should get that out of our head. We should get that out of our head. The United Nations is not coming to tell that you are a state. Ambassador, you are not a state, so start doing something. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You accept your statehood by your conviction, your stand, your forcefulness on that particular issue. And you will state that recognize you. As simple as that. Eventually, the United Nations will come around. So we should not get unduly influenced by all of that. The other thing they tell us also, we hear the reactionary forces, that, oh, Ambassador, you voted for to join French Cameroon. They themselves repeat. I saw something, this is what Honor Weaver was saying. French Cameroon minister saying, why are you complaining about? You are the one who voted to join us. That's what they've always been saying. So you came to join us, did we invite you? Did you see anywhere that we voted that we want to join you? You are the one who voted to come and join us. So you take everything we are dumping on you. But again, if you look at the way French Cameroon and France, and I must add France, because people must be very careful when you read this thing. If you listen to news from France, you read newspaper from France, they have been in the process of trying to condition us psychologically by the way they phrase things. If you notice, consistently we're talking of northwest, southern province of Cameroon. There's a reason for that. To get it sink into your head that you are still part of Cameroon. But when they're talking about the other region, whatever, they never insist of Cameroon. There are another narrative which they use. They will say, you are a linguistic minority in Cameroon. Now you have to accept. You are within Cameroon, and only Cameroon, once you are a linguistic minority. Once they start using that term of phrase, it means that you are not involved in critical decision making because you are a minority. Yes. Majority has decided and democratically accept the rule of the majority. And much more recently, I was reading one thing from France. They said northwest, southwest region of Cameroon, which has a majority Anglophone population. You understand the way they're manipulating things? I mean, these people are very crazy. When you read these things, be very, very careful. But some of our journalists, when they read this thing, I've seen from newspapers at home, they are not very critical and look at some of these things. They just repeat what they see. And we're killing and shooting ourselves on the foot. When they're telling you that you are a majority in northwest, southwest of Cameroon, what they're now telling you is that, frankly, you see, they're also what? French Cameroon citizens there. You just happen to be a majority there. But when they talk about the other side, they never said, oh, majority is French speaking on that side. They never say so. So these people have a way of manipulating the press. People read it, and those who don't know, imagine a Kenyan reading that thing. Only in Nigeria next door. That's how they come up with it, because they don't understand, they don't know. So we want to be able to read these things, some of these things, very, very carefully, and try to deconstruct that narrative and tell the French off. I've always argued, we have no business with France. We've never been connected, we have no ties with France, whether historical, economic, social, cultural, whatever. What the French are simply doing are using French Cameroon as a proxy state to access our natural wealth and resources. That's what is happening. Ask any Frenchman. What ties have you got with, if you want to put it bluntly, British Southern Cameroons? He has no answer. All you tell is, oh, but you joined French Cameroon. That's all they will say. So we must be careful in some of these things when they tell us. And we must be able to prepare to debunk them. But going back on joining, let us recall that that word joining, a woolly word which was used by the United Nations and the British, it was never defined. But eventually, as a result of discussion between the Boer government and the Yaoundé government, it was agreed that the word joining means federating. So at the time of the plebiscite, it was clearly understood, because that meaning was given to the British and to the United Nations, that joining French Cameroon meant federating with French Cameroon, forming a two-state federation. A two-state aggregative, this is what we talk about, aggregative, two coming together. You will see that later on, this whole thing was falsified. After the vote at the United Nations, we went to Fumban, French Cameroon popped like a magician, a document, which was drafted by itself, passed through its parliament, adopted and signed by Ahijo alone. That's what they said was a federal constitution, and imposed it on our people. Our people should have rejected that whole thing. They should have. They ought to have. They had every right. But I think they were a bit still naive. With all the conditioning there, or the United Nations, or whatever thing it is, and so on. So that document was an annexation document. It was a subterfuge for annexation. Because if you look at that document, and this is something which we have not been very critical at looking. Look at the original document, which was adopted on the 1st of September 1961, not in October, 1st of September 1961 by French Cameroon. The long title says, this is simply an amendment of the French Cameroon Constitution of 1960. And the reason for the amendment is to facilitate the return of part of our territory by Britain and the United Nations. That's what the document said. We are part of our territory. They are simply making to facilitate you. The consequence was that the federation we were talking about was not an aggregative federation, but was a disaggregative federation. Otherwise, French Cameroon was the federation. Now, simply facilitating the absorption of Southern Cameroon, which they call West Cameroon in those days. That's the beginning of our problem. And on 1st of October, worst thing is, the British said they transfer sovereignty. Like all scholars, and I've cited a list of 20, 25, 30 scholars, most of them French-speaking, who have examined that situation, come to a conclusion that what happened on 1st October was not decolonization, but recolonization. French Cameroon was the successor colonialist. We are therefore in a classic, I've kept on arguing this, we are in a typical colonial situation, and French Cameroon is a colonial occupier oppressor. I must get them out of that territory. You don't negotiate that kind of people. You just kick them out. Don't mind their pretense that they have all the weapons whatsoever. I'm reminded of what Mao Zedong told Khrushchev when they had this big quarrel within the communist, what they call those days, big quarrel. And Khrushchev was threatening China with nuclear weapons and so on. Mao Zedong responded and said, yes, I know you have nuclear weapons. We are prepared to sacrifice 200 million Chinese. There will still be enough Chinese left to ensure that we win that war. Amber, 8 million people. And I've told them, told French Cameroon people, you can go up and down. We'll sacrifice 4 million. There will still be 4 million left to ensure that we have it. So, like it has been said here, this is another thing you go to negotiate with the colonizer. You are talking of saying, look, we are having talks to deal with consequential issues as we've asserted our independence. Well, I keep on saying we're asserting that independence. We're not going to ask for, do you go to ask, French Cameroon has no independence to give anyway to begin with. It has none. We are asserting our independence. We say we're an independent people. What do one day you've been plundering our resources, spoliation, for over half a century, our natural wealth and resources. You'll have to pay. Reparation have to pay for that. You went and declared an illegal war and an unjust war. You'll have to pay for that. So when the leaders are talking about meeting them, and that's what we're talking about. Suppose you don't think that when you talk about going to talk to them like this, or dialogue, whatever, we're going to meet them and say, okay, we give you this, give us this answer. There's no give and take here. There's nothing we're giving them. There's nothing they're giving us. Nothing. We are simply saying, and fortunately for us, all of this is regulated by international law. Who owns what? What property? And I was telling one French Cameroonian when he was, I said, no. We don't care. You can take the Paris embassy and the Central African Chadian embassy. We are not interested in that. But all the embassies, all the English-speaking countries, they'll be ours. And he could not believe what they're talking about. I said, yes. Keep all the ones in the French-speaking country. We don't care about those. From Canada all right down here to Nigeria to South Africa, all of that, Britain and so on, we'll take that and add German on top. So you could just go and stay with that. He could not believe it. So there are those things we have to take as a result of this, of our setting of our independence for these people. So that's what all the negotiation will be about. People talked recently about this, about making this moral equivalence, violence on both sides. Again, that's another process of conditioning. You read papers, when you read the reports from Human Rights Watch, on all of these, they always make that statement, violence on both sides. What do you mean by violence on each side? Oh, you see, we have to be balanced. No, we have to be balanced. But I think Dr. Congress ably put it, I can't even put it better. You know, here are people defending themselves, literally with empty hands, using sticks, bow and arrow, machetes, you know, catapults, and the den guns, which everybody has in their homes and so on. And you come and say, look, making a moral equivalent to say violence on both sides? It doesn't make sense. That is victimizing the victim all over again. And we cannot allow that narrative. If you see it anywhere, that thing, right back to whoever written that thing and tell that's rubbish. We don't accept it. When the Western war was fighting against Hitler, I never heard them say, oh, there's violence on both sides. Why should not be violence on both sides when it comes to our case? It can't be. The same way we are resisting. In the same way the resistance you were resisting Nazi occupation. It's exactly the same thing. And the same way the Europeans were seeing Hitler is the same way we are seeing Beer and his people. And the same way they saw the Nazi army is the same way we see Beer's army. I will not allow this whole thing to go on. We have everything. So let us not be hopping from independence and then talking about dependence. Because I've said there's nothing for us to gain by that. Now the referendum thing has been a lot of debate. Let me clarify this whole thing. There are two types of referenda. People are talking about referendum now. I can tell you it is not on. It's absolutely not on. I've had an argument with my friend Dennis Atemken, if all of you don't know this Atemken. Oh no, the United Nations is taking care. It's a lie. The United Nations never goes to organize a referendum in a country where there's a recognized authority in control. And for us, the fiction is that we are under French Cameroon sovereignty. The British at least say so. The United Nations by its attitude seems to suggest so. So the most the United Nations will say, okay, there's a referendum, so French Cameroon organize the referendum. We might just monitor. But when French Cameroon goes to organize it, it will determine eligibility, who's going to vote. They determine that. What about polling station? They determine that. What about computing the result? Then who declared the result? We've seen how they declare in the Constitutional Council. They'll do that. So what are you going to find? Even if the international community find that there were irregularities, what would they do? We condemn. They will say we condemn, isn't it? Condemnation. It ends there. Or even, let me say, in an extreme case, say, we are going to impose sanction. French Cameroon laugh. They can live with sanction. There are many ways of circumventing sanction. So it doesn't help us anyway. It doesn't. So we can never accept a referendum when our territory is still under occupation. We can't accept that. When we have control over our territory, there and then we can talk about referendum. But this referendum here is not a referendum where you give an option of people. Do you want independence or do you want dependence? This will be an independence referendum. Why do you have those things? Why do you have Nigeria? Why do you have other countries that are going before us? Is to convince the international community that independence is not something which the leaders impose on the people. Because that's the argument. Well, you just simply by force, you've heard how people say so. A few people with arms that are imposing things on people and so on. These people are free. They want to be happy slaves among us. You want to come and impose it on them. And so that referendum would show, the results will show that the people want independence. You are not asking them a choice. Do you want to become a part of French Cameroon? No, it's not that. You want just to see arithmetically. And in all those, in Algeria, in East Timor, you see those votes, that always at least 93% of the people vote for independence. And that shuts the mouth of whichever arguments we want to make. That is the only instance. If you look at other countries that have gone through the same thing, in Algeria, you look at, that's what happened. If you look at even in Namibia, that's what happened. So let us not be dragged into this thing to be deceived. Having a premature referendum where French Cameroon controls everything and therefore have no choice. And once that has happened, you're having an upskill task, trying to turn it, come to find out to his own dismay. Found out to his dismay. And I even come to those people, I said, you know what? You should up your game. I mean, we were talking about up. You up your game. And the Secretary General said, how do you up? I said, you know what? Officially declare Mr. Biya a usurper, an illegitimate head of state. And when you do that, we on this other side, Ambazonians, will declare that we cannot be talking with an illegitimate government. No, we can't. We say, if they want that you have a legitimate government, then they can sit down and talk with them. So, Mr. Biya, no, you're illegitimate, you're a usurper, and so on. But you know, they come to people. They're a bit afraid, even to make such a statement, they're a bit afraid of that, and so on. But whatever the case, if we get anywhere, I will sit down and the representative of those people there, that's the first thing I'll raise there. What guarantees that the thing you negotiate here, you talk here, or whatever thing it is, it will be accepted by your people there, because you are illegitimate. To say the very least, you are a contested leader. That's the very least. The leadership is contested, the regime is contested. So we're not going to put our signature there, something which is become invalid tomorrow. So that is something which we're going to do. So by way of conclusion, let me say this. And this is something which people have not yet applied their mind to see. France and French Cameroon have certain war objectives which they want to accomplish by this war, which they declared on Amazonia. The first objective is to destroy the people of Amazonia. The first objective, to destroy the people of Amazonia. And this genocidal objective is glaringly evident. We have seen it by the way they conduct the unjust war. We've seen indiscriminate killing. And for quite some months now, they decided that every male child, yes, from 12 years, 8 to 10 years and above, eliminate. Why are they doing that? They've calculated and they said, their French advisors said, if you do that, you can be sure, because this is the argument that we can fight this thing, go on and so on. They said, but if you kill, the same old logic of the Egyptian pharaoh, isn't it? If you kill all those male children, then for the next 50 years, you will not have any child, there will be no any child who will grow up and so on. So let's do that. And that's what they've said themselves are doing, and so on. And you do know that one of the things about colonial occupation is a colonial authority tries to change the demographics of the territory by transferring its population to their own. Now, this is very, very important. Once they transfer their population, which is what French Cameroon, the second objective is to make sure they transfer their population of French Cameroon into our territory, neutralize our demographics. Now, once they are there, you can't even, that's the kind of thing they're talking about, oh, majority Anglophones now who are living there and so on. So tomorrow they'll say, oh, now they are no longer a majority, and no, this whole thing are even up or they're less, and they start blaming us. Maybe it's our birth rate, our women are not having many children as they ought to do, or whatever story. Or the best was maybe we've migrated to Nigeria even, and left the territory. At that point, you cannot win an election even in your own village, because the demographics would have been changed. The economic dynamics also change. The social and cultural dynamics also change. This is a certified technique of all colonial authorities. And that's the second objective we want to attain, these people. To forcibly seize the territory of Ambazonia so as to have unimpeded access to our territory, our natural resources, our wealth. That's what they're trying to do, being pushed by France. France, you all know the French story. Everybody knows France. When France leaves Africa, France will be worse than the West African country because France has nothing to offer. Nothing to offer. I've been to Europe. I've not been go to Britain. I've not seen anybody go to any shop and say, I want French goods. No. Their manufacturing industry is, they have shoddy goods. They have nothing, absolutely nothing. They don't have natural resources, like other European countries like Germany, like Britain, and all this and so on. They have nothing. So that's why they are looting African countries, plundering African countries. Even their minister are being paid out of resources that are looted from Africa. So that's one thing they have counted. If we can get these people out here, we'll have free access to all of that resources, which would then make us have a good life. The third and final objective, of course, is to steal Ambazonian territory. You want to steal that territory, absorb into French Cameroon, occupy it, and then transfer the population so as to possess that land. Now, this may look far-fetched, but let me tell you a story. What French Cameroon has been telling its population, of course, uninformed and ignorant, is this. They say what they call their so-called northern and southern region actually was territory into which Ahidjo made a mistake of allowing fleeing Biafrans and Nigerians during the Civil War.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
So Ahidjo allowed them to come in there, they settled there.
And now they want to take it.
But these people are very troublesome people. They need to go back to where they came from. That's why you find the argument always talking about, Kuzai Ayer. Go where you came from. You are Biafrans. You are Nigerians. You are dogs to be put down. Or you are rats, like vermin, to be ratted. That's where this whole thing comes from. And you notice when this war started, what did the prefect in Manfred do? The first thing, he said, you guys run for your dead life. Go. And people say, we're going to where? That's not his business. Go. In other words, go to Nigeria where you came from. Go, get out. And systematically they've been doing this. And the French Cameroon people believe it. I've talked with some. They are shocked to hear that this is our territory. This is amazing, frankly. Some people should take as self-evident. For them, it's news. It's news. You mean to say people have been in this place here, don't come from Nigeria, I'm not Nigerian, not Biafran? He said, no. We have a government. Which government? We have a whole system there. Which system? Part of the reason is that these people had come there, destroy all our archival material. Go to where? We had ministries. Just ask for one single file in those ministries. There's none. The Public Service Commission, which was in great support there, all of that destroyed. The Prime Minister's Lodge, everything, all the German artifacts, everything, all stolen away. There's up to nothing. The archives in Boya, the Bamida Museum, does it still exist? everything looted and taken to French camp. We don't know whatever happened and so on. What was the strategy? So that your children, our children, don't even know that you had any prior existence. You don't know. And that's how many of our children have grown up. So you argue with their children, by only ask them, they say, what is wrong with this thing about our Cameroon or Cameroon? That's kind of a thing. Because they've never known better. They've never seen. It is our responsibility to teach them these things. That we had a government in Boya. There was a printing press in Boya there. We had ministries with files, civil servants. All of that thing was just cut, taken to Yaoundé and burned and destroyed. So you don't have any trace on history. And so when they tell this thing to our people, they believe it. They believe it. So that is something we must keep on fighting. We cannot go and live elsewhere. That is our land. And that's why you have the Amber Boss always saying, each time I've seen those videos they come out with, they say this is our land, we are going nowhere, we will die and fight here, this is our land. And nobody comes to take the land from us. And that must be our attitude. Because apart from the law of self-determination, which is right, they also have a claim, a legitimate claim to territory that is our own, and territory that is protected by international boundary treaties. So we must be able to accept all of that. All of this looks so somber, so discouraging, and so on. But we should never be discouraged. That's part of our struggle. Conscientizing our people, our citizens, and so on. I was talking with Francis the other day. Francis is here. You know, these are some of our young men who were either born in
Douala.
where is he? Were born in Douala, some in Yaoundé. They've known nothing else. In fact, I met a young lady who actually speaks perfect Ewondo. He was born in Yaoundé. And he cannot understand what we are talking about. But he said his eyes opened in 2017 when this killing started. She decided to go and start digging into her history. And when she discovered it, she said she became as angry as anything you can. And this is what we start doing to our children. So, as we end, by the time we end this conference here, I'd like us for two things, and which we must take a resolution on. We must apply our mind on that. We have Mr. Emmanuel Macron, who I understand is President of France. As a young man, very uninformed, don't mind his puffiness. When he was elected President of France, he saw himself as an Louis XIV, you know. And I think now the scales are falling from his eyes, seeing what is really happening. You know very little about even European history, very little about not talk about African history or not talk about our own history. And the French Cameroon president, Mr. Biya, whose situation is made worse now by the fact that he is illegitimate, is a usurper. This man has absolutely nothing to offer. We've talked about begging for federalism. One thing the international community does not even know is that since 1964, our people have been calling for this famous dialogue or talk. Since 1964, it's amazing. Fallon was the first person who started that whole thing. As the head of government, said the way I see this thing going is not working right. The two sides should meet and discuss this whole thing. It was brushed aside. In the 70s, Foncha, as vice president, later on Muna and so on, called for talks, nothing. Dinka came, called for the same thing, nothing. Even outside influence, the then Commonwealth Secretary General, Emeka Anyangwe, called for talks. He came to Yaoundé there and said, I've seen the problem here. You guys must actually sit down and sort this whole thing. He didn't care. Kofi Annan also, the same thing. He called, they push him and talk, nothing. At the Banjul case, where I was counsel, the African Union even said we are prepared to facilitate this talk, so that they said, gave them 180 days. They just ignored it, nothing happened. We have a long, going back to the 60s, we asked for talks, nothing happening. Why is Biya running away from talks? Because Biya has no idea at all Beer doesn't do any thinking. It's incapable of thinking. And Ahidjo analyzed him very well. They asked Ahidjo, when he was in exile, so how come you choose this kind of a character? And they said, Ahidjo confessed, so look, all the intelligence report which he had, he could never know this man was going to turn out to be such a fraud. So he just went, fool. That was the French word he used. He was going to be such a fraud. I never knew. This man can only work under guidance. You give him a task, swim from here to here. He will not ask you, but why should I all end here? Maybe I should also swim there. He will not. If you don't tell him, swim here and then continue like that, he will not end here. That is how it is. No ideas. Nothing at all. Doesn't think. So that's the kind of man. Is that the kind of man you say that you're going to negotiate or talk anything with or whatever? That way you run away from talks. He cannot. He has nothing to offer. Absolutely nothing. So we must bear that in mind. And so therefore, we must ask ourselves, why is he, this cruel despot, why is he and Mr. Macron? What is it that gives them the right to commit this kind of crimes in our territory and the world is just watching? Why? Who gave them that right? The mass killing, mass murders. What he called his soldiers, I think they're more a group of criminals who are just under military fatigue. I've never seen any professional army act the way they act. So we must ask ourselves. I've searched through the laws, I've seen there's no law whatsoever that authorizes them to act the way they're doing. Killing over 2 years and nobody responding. They don't have any moral scruples. Nothing. The final thing, of course, is what I've always said. And I've told the British, on several occasions I've met with the MPs and some of the members of the House of Lords. And this urgency, all the leaders mentioned it. We have a serious humanitarian situation here. Very, very serious. The statistics which are being quoted, they are very underestimated. It's far more than that. Far more than that. The UN will say, oh, we have 80 or 60,000. Of course, they're referring to those that are registered. And maybe only those that are in the Calabar area, whatever thing it is. What has simply happened, many of our people, especially the men, they don't want to go into camps. It's humiliating. You're an able-bodied person, you get up in the morning, you just sleep in the camp on the mat. So what else? So most of them refuse to go to a camp. They blend into the community because neighboring states have people of the same community. So they blend. And they carry on things there. The proper estimate, we have something about close to 500,000 refugees. If you combine those who are in Nigeria, those who are in Ghana, and in fact, if you add those who are in French Cameroons, even more, going to 1 million. The internally displaced people, there are at least 1 million. There are at least 1 million. This is a huge humanitarian catastrophe. Many of the things which we are not going to only see later on, the day after independence. We shall see this thing. These people are there, they are drinking, in fact, no source of clean water, isn't it? They are living in the bush, inclement weather, mosquitoes, snakes, or whatever. The disease that is going to come out of this will have to have a very serious healthcare system in Amazonia. Very serious to attend to this. So that's the situation which we're having. And so I've always advocated that we need a protective humanitarian intervention, either by the United Nations itself, or if we don't do it, to authorize a state to do that. That protective humanitarian intervention means that the United Nations force, peacekeeping force, will move into a territory. And that automatically means French family forces should get out, and the administration will get out. Once their forces have gone out, the administration will go out. With a transitional period, the UN itself will be in charge of administration. It happened in East Timor, it happened in Namibia, and so on. And the purpose for this is to let in humanitarian aid to flow. Humanitarian agencies will come in, build temporary tents, people can just start coming back gradually. After a period which we agreed to between our people and the UN itself, it may be 1 year, maybe 2 years, when the situation has stabilized. You work at everything. Then the power is handed back to Amazonian people. This process is independent of the talks we're talking about, because the talks talks can go on for even 1 year. You must realize this. They may even go on for 1 year. When the South Sudanese were negotiating with this thing, they were in Addis Ababa for 6 to 8 months. Somebody has to foot that bill. Surely they won't ask us to foot that bill. Never. We will never foot that bill. Well, my friends, the facilitators will either foot that bill, or better still, French Cameroon have been stealing all our resources. We'll have to foot that bill for us to stay there, to make about security, to make about the stay there for all that period, until this agreement is reached. So I think we must have this very clear in mind as a main priority. We must advocate for protective humanitarian intervention in Amazonia. The situation is getting worse by the day, and we need that protective humanitarian intervention. And I think if, at the end of this conference, we can agree on those parameters, and I agree that we shall all go out and campaign seriously for that to happen right now, even while we are. Thank you very much.
Ambassador, can we give Prof one more round of applause?